What Camilla just realized behind closed doors, in the private residential wing of Balmoral Castle, is that absolute power is merely an illusion if you do not hold the literal keys to the estate. In less than 48 hours, the Queen Consort found herself standing before a heavy oak door leading to the inner royal apartments, swiping an access card that quietly flashed red. She was not escorted out by security guards, nor was there any dramatic shouting match echoing through the ancient stone halls. Instead, she was quietly and politely directed by a mid-level estate manager to exit through a secondary service corridor generally used for catering deliveries and logistics. That subtle routing change, that quiet visual humiliation carried a devastating, deeper meaning. It was the moment she understood that her entire empire was being dismantled from the inside out. This is the story of a staggering exploitation of royal proximity, a secret commercial enterprise conducted in the shadows of the Scottish Highlands, and the silent, ruthless retaliation engineered by Prince William. We are going to unpack the clandestine financial operation Camilla and her family attempted to legitimize away from the eyes of the British public. We will explore how William and Prince Edward uncovered the meticulous paper trail that exposed this betrayal, and we will detail the chilling administrative execution that stripped the Queen Consort of the one thing she had spent 30 years ruthlessly fighting to secure. By the end of this, you will understand exactly how the modern monarchy weaponizes protocol to destroy an internal threat without ever raising its voice. To understand the magnitude of this collapse, we first have to look at the towering illusion of absolute power Camilla had constructed around herself. For 3 decades, she played a methodical waiting game operating under the assumption that total control over Charles equated to total sovereign authority. She endured the years of public vitriol, the shadow of Princess Diana, and the quiet disdain of the old guard courtiers, all for the promise of ultimate institutional supremacy. When the crown was finally placed on her head, she believed she had won the long game. She felt entirely untouchable. Her confidence swelled into an era of unprecedented institutional erasure where the legacy of Diana was subtly scrubbed from public memory, and the historic sacrifices of those who came before her were overshadowed by her own aggressive public relations campaigns. But this illusion of power bred a dangerous sense of entitlement. Camilla began to systematically elevate her non-royal children, weaving them into the fabric of the monarchy. Her son, Tom Parker Bowles, became a frequent fixture in the royal orbit, standing on balconies and attending high-profile state functions. Camilla believed that because she had secured the king, she could retroactively bestow a royal inheritance upon her own bloodline. What she failed to realize was that while she wore the crown, the actual wealth, the land, the private estates, and the vast financial apparatus of the monarchy did not belong to Charles. They belonged to the institution, and increasingly, they belonged to William. This brings us to the trigger, the staggering act of commercial desperation that ultimately sealed her fate. Despite the titles and the tiaras, Camilla and her family possess no generational royal wealth. They have no sovereign duchies funding their private ventures. This underlying financial insecurity drove a deeply ill-advised secret power grab. Reports and internal administrative leaks began to suggest that Tom Parker Bowles, utilizing the immense gravitational pull of his mother, was orchestrating private commercial gatherings at Balmoral Castle. These were not official state dinners. These were highly exclusive, monetized networking events, catering to foreign billionaires and international power brokers. Under the guise of literary events and culinary showcases, access to the most sacred private sanctuary of the British royal family was allegedly being leveraged for private family gain. Balmoral is not just a piece of real estate. It is the spiritual epicenter of the modern monarchy. It was the beloved refuge of the late Queen Elizabeth. It is a place heavily steeped in the enduring memory of Princess Diana. For Prince William, it is a landscape of profound personal significance, a place of quiet grief and fierce protection. The idea that the sacred halls of Balmoral were being transformed into a pay-to-play commercial venue by the son of the woman who had caused his mother so much pain was an act of moral outrage that the Prince of Wales simply could not ignore. William did not react with tabloid fury. He did not leak angry statements to the press or engage in petty shouting matches. He operates with a cold, forensic emotional discipline inherited directly from his grandmother. Alongside Prince Edward, who has increasingly taken on the role of the quiet enforcer of royal integrity, William launched a silent administrative audit. They bypassed Charles entirely, knowing the king would likely paralyze any action to protect his wife. Instead, William used his authority within the broader estate management structure to pull the ledgers. They found the unofficial guest lists, the catering invoices disguised as personal expenses, and the subtle paper trail that linked the Queen Consort's family directly to the staggering exploitation of royal property. The retaliation was a masterclass in weaponized restraint. William did not demand that Camilla be banished. He simply used the system against her, executing a series of administrative adjustments that effectively locked her out of her own presumed domain. It began with the payroll sheets. The private security details and catering staffs that had been unofficially reallocated to support Tom Parker Bowles events were quietly reassigned back to their official duties. Any invoice bearing the Parker Bowles name was flagged and returned unpaid. Then came the physical barrier. Security protocols at Balmoral and other key residences were updated overnight under the guise of routine digital maintenance. The master access codes historically granted to the Queen's extended family were permanently revoked. When Camilla arrived at Balmoral to oversee what was supposed to be another lucrative private gathering, she found the trap had already snapped shut. Standing in that hallway, holding an deactivated access card and facing a polite but unyielding staff member pointing her toward a side door, she realized the terrifying truth. William had not just stopped a party. He had drawn a permanent invisible line around the true power of the monarchy. The administrative trick had been executed flawlessly. She was still the Queen Consort, in name, but in that exact moment she recognized that she owned absolutely nothing. The institutional retaliation was complete, and the most devastating part was that she could not say a single word about it without exposing her own commercial desperation. Retreating through that secondary service corridor, Camilla was left with only one remaining play. For 30 years, her ultimate trump card had always been Charles. Whenever she faced resistance from the establishment, the press, or the public, she simply retreated behind the unwavering devotion of the man who had torn the monarchy apart to have her. She believed that even if William controlled the administrative levers of the estates, Charles, as the sovereign, held the ultimate veto power. The moment she was back in the privacy of her own quarters, she made the call, expecting the king to immediately summon his son, demand an apology, and reinstate her family's access. Instead, she was met with the most agonizing betrayal of her entire royal life. Charles did nothing. The king was already fully aware of the situation because William had not acted recklessly. Before the access cards were ever deactivated, the Prince of Wales and Prince Edward had presented the king with the undeniable forensic proof of the commercial exploitation happening under his roof. They showed him the unofficial guest lists, the monetization of royal proximity, and the profound reputational risk it posed to the crown. Confronted with the cold, hard evidence of commercial desperation orchestrated by his wife's family, Charles found himself backed into an impossible corner. He is a monarch deeply concerned with his own legacy, and increasingly reliant on William to carry the heavy lifting of the modern institution. He could not afford a catastrophic public war with his immensely popular heir over his stepson's catering invoices. When Camilla demanded his intervention, Charles reportedly offered only a devastatingly polite deflection. He told her that estate logistics were now strictly an administrative matter for the Prince of Wales. He would not overrule his son. That quiet refusal, that agonizing silence from the one man she had entirely relied upon, was the psychological climax of her 30-year campaign. It was the exact moment the illusion shattered. She realized that Charles might wear the crown, but he lacked the strength, or perhaps the willingness to defend her private empire against the iron will of the future king. She had spent decades mastering the man, only to realize she had completely miscalculated the machinery of the institution. This devastating realization forces us to unpack the harsh reality of her commercial desperation. To the outside world, the Queen Consort appears draped in the unimaginable wealth of a 1,000-year-old monarchy. She travels in gilded carriages, wears priceless diamonds, and commands the attention of global leaders. But the forensic financial truth is far more brutal. Camilla owns almost none of it. The palaces belong to the state. The crown jewels belong to the nation. And the actual liquid wealth, the billions of pounds in real estate, agriculture, and commercial investments that fund the royal lifestyle, belong primarily to the Duchy of Cornwall, which is controlled absolutely and exclusively by Prince William. Camilla and her family possess no sovereign wealth of their own. Her children have no inherited royal trust funds to fall back on. Their access to high society and global power brokers is entirely dependent on her proximity to the throne. This is exactly why the Balmoral scheme was so critical and ultimately so tragic. It was a symptom of a family rushing to cash in on a temporary lease of power. They know that the moment Charles is gone, the protective shield disappears. William will be king, and the Parker Bowles family will be instantly relegated to the absolute margins of royal history. Their frantic attempts to monetize their current access expose a deep existential dread about their financial future. William did not just shut down a party, he cut off their unauthorized pension plan. As Camilla absorbed the finality of her newly restricted status, the institutional weight of the monarchy silently shifted back to its rightful center. Without a single public statement, the new order was established. The private drawing rooms at Balmoral that were meant to host foreign billionaires were immediately repurposed. In a move of brilliant psychological warfare, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, quietly utilized the exact same spaces to host private, unpublicized meetings for her early childhood charities. There was no gloating and no triumphant press release. Catherine simply occupied the space with the uncomplaining grace and quiet authority that Camilla has never been able to naturally replicate. The visual symbols of this shift were subtle but devastating to anyone who understood the language of the palace. Inside the private corridors of the Scottish estate, staff members noticed that certain decorative elements had been rearranged. A specific collection of archival photographs featuring the late Queen Elizabeth and a young Princess Diana, which had been discreetly moved to storage during Camilla's tenure, were quietly brought back and placed in the primary hallways. Every time Camilla walked past them, it was a silent, echoing reminder that she is merely a guest in a house built by bloodlines she tried to erase. William and Catherine were making it undeniably clear that the history of the crown would not be rewritten by the second wife. This is the ultimate tragedy of the Queen Consort's long game. She successfully captured the heart of the king, but she could never capture the soul of the institution. She traded 3 decades of her life enduring public hatred and orchestrating relentless public relations campaigns for a crown that ultimately grants her no actual security. The staggering contrast between her outward billionaire public relations image and her broke institutional reality is a masterclass in the dangers of overplaying your hand. She reached for absolute power, but found herself standing in a service corridor holding a piece of plastic that no longer opens the door. William and Anne have proven that they do not need to scream to be heard. They do not need to leak messy tabloid gossip to protect their family. They simply wait, they observe, and when the moment is right, they use the terrifying weight of royal protocol to silently crush any internal threat. The gates of Balmoral remain closed to those who would exploit its legacy, and the Prince of Wales has sent a chilling message to anyone who believes the modern monarchy can be bought. Thank you for joining us as we unpack the hidden power dynamics of the British royal family. If you found this forensic analysis insightful, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into the untold stories behind the palace walls. Leave a comment below and let us know what you think about William's silent retaliation. Until next time, keep looking beyond the headlines.